You know what's interesting? A man can spend 2 decades building himself, learning patience, controlling his emotions, surviving heartbreak, becoming more peaceful, reserved, and emotionally stable, yet still feel nervous the second a younger woman shows him genuine interest. Not desire, not simple curiosity, but real interest. Because somewhere beneath the surface, his mind has already started creating the rejection before anything has even happened. She'll eventually lose interest. She probably has an agenda. One day she'll wake up and realize I'm too old for her. And if we're being honest, many men watching this were never actually rejected by the woman they fear. They rejected themselves before she ever had the chance. So before we continue, if this topic already feels strangely personal, subscribe. Not because this is about chasing numbers, but because there are very few spaces left where men can hear honest conversations about the feelings they hide without being judged or laughed at. Now let me share something many women rarely say openly. A younger woman does not always choose an older man because of wealth, reputation, or some imagined luxurious lifestyle. Sometimes she chooses him because, for the first time, she feels emotionally secure around someone who is not constantly trying to prove his masculinity every moment. And that difference carries more weight than most people realize. Younger men often enter relationships as if they are constantly being evaluated by invisible observers. They feel pressure to impress, to win, to compete, to be wanted every second. Even their affection can carry a hidden sense of anxiety underneath it. But an older man who has truly experienced life, especially one who has quietly endured pain and challenges, often carries a completely different emotional presence. And women sense that presence long before they analyze it logically. She notices the way you don't interrupt conversations just to demonstrate intelligence. She notices how silence with you doesn't feel uncomfortable or forced. She notices how you don't immediately turn every interaction into something sexual just to reassure yourself that you are still attractive. You assume she is focused on your age, but sometimes she is actually noticing your emotional state. And that realization bothers many men because it breaks the simple explanation they have always been given. Many have been taught that attraction is mainly about appearance, instant chemistry, and surface-level qualities. But women, especially women who are emotionally aware, often experience attraction through emotional contrast. They notice how being around you feels compared to the confusion and instability they may already know. That is why some younger women feel drained around men their own age. It is not because younger men are automatically bad people, but because emotional immaturity often creates noise. And after experiencing enough noise, peace can begin to feel incredibly attractive. Do you know what can truly draw her closer sometimes? Your self-control, the fact that you don't constantly seek approval, the fact that you are not desperately looking around the room every few minutes trying to convince everyone, including yourself, that you have value. Ironically, the older man who believes he has become less desirable may actually be carrying something much stronger than he understands. Presence. And genuine presence has become rare. Most people today are mentally scattered, constantly distracted, and always presenting edited versions of themselves online. Even modern dating has started feeling like personal marketing. But when she encounters a man who is deeply present, emotionally balanced, aware, and able to observe instead of immediately react, it can affect her in ways she never expected. Sometimes even she does not fully understand why. That is the part many men overlook. Attraction does not always arrive loudly at the beginning. Sometimes it feels like emotional comfort, like finally being able to breathe after holding tension for a long time. And if you have ever noticed a younger woman becoming unexpectedly emotionally connected to you, not because you chased her relentlessly, but because she kept finding herself drawn back to your presence, that was not random. There was a psychological reason behind it. Because what many women quietly desire, especially after experiencing disappointment, is not endless excitement. They want emotional stability, and older men who have genuinely lived through challenges, who have experienced loss, responsibility, mistakes, and moments of regret, sometimes develop that stability naturally without even realizing it. But there is another reason she may choose you, and it is something many men completely fail to notice. Sometimes she chooses you because you make her feel recognized in a way that men her age never learned how to provide. And no, this is not the shallow version of being seen that you find in romantic movies. This means something much deeper. It means noticing the real person beneath the surface. The version of her that feels tired, the version that feels uncertain, the version overwhelmed by emotions but hiding behind confidence, social media images, humor, independence, and a strong exterior. You notice that side of her without demanding that she explain everything. And that can affect a woman much more deeply than many men understand, especially younger women who grew up in a world where attention is everywhere, but genuine attention is becoming increasingly rare. Think about it. She can upload a picture and receive hundreds of reactions within minutes, compliments, emojis, messages, and signs of attraction. But after some time, much of it begins to feel meaningless, because being desired and being emotionally understood are two completely different experiences. Connection. So when she meets a man who truly pays attention, listens with care, remembers the little things, and notices emotional changes without constantly questioning her, it reaches a deeper place inside her. You become psychologically important to her before she even consciously decides that you are. That is why some women suddenly say things like, "I don't know why, but I feel so comfortable around you." That statement carries meaning because comfort is not something casual in female psychology. Comfort is often the first sign that emotional trust is beginning to develop before her logical mind fully understands it. And this is exactly where many older men make mistakes. The moment they sense that she is becoming emotionally attached, they start questioning it. They investigate it, analyze every detail, or even worse, they start lowering their own value before she ever gets the opportunity to choose naturally. They say things like, "You're too young for me. Eventually you'll want someone younger. Maybe you just enjoy the attention." But do you understand what those words communicate emotionally? They tell her that you do not trust her own feelings and judgment, and women are often highly aware of that kind of emotional uncertainty. A woman can accept complicated situations. What slowly destroys attraction is insecurity that hides behind the appearance of being humble. Because the reality is, your age is not always the thing creating separation. Sometimes it is your own fear about your age that creates the distance. And emotionally aware, women can recognize that difference almost immediately. But there is another uncomfortable reality that many people avoid discussing. Sometimes a younger woman chooses an older man because previous experiences with younger men never allowed her to feel emotionally feminine, and that completely changes the dynamic. This idea can be difficult for some men to understand, so listen closely. When we say that a younger woman may feel more feminine around an older man, it does not mean control, dependence, or some outdated idea where she loses her independence or stops having her own thoughts. It is about emotional balance. It is about what happens psychologically when a woman no longer feels like she has to carry the entire emotional responsibility of every interaction. Many younger women are tired in ways they rarely express openly. Not necessarily physically, but emotionally. They become exhausted from relationships where they have to create all the depth, explain every feeling, manage the tension, figure out where they stand, interpret confusing signals, and carefully handle fragile egos so that simple honesty does not turn into conflict. After experiencing enough situations like that, a woman often stops feeling relaxed in relationships. She becomes constantly aware, constantly observing, always trying to predict what will happen next. Even during moments of closeness, part of her mind remains guarded. Then she meets a man who feels emotionally stable, not someone who is perfect, not someone who has no emotions, but someone who is grounded. A man who does not fall apart when she disagrees with him. A man who does not panic when she becomes quiet. A man who does not constantly search for reassurance through attention, flirting, jealousy, or control. That kind of emotional stability creates something many women deeply desire but struggle to explain. It creates the feeling that she can finally relax and soften. And softness is one of the most misunderstood concepts. Many people immediately connect softness with weakness. But psychologically, softness appears when someone no longer feels emotionally threatened. It happens when her nervous system no longer expects instability. You can see it through small changes. Her voice becomes different around you. Her body language becomes more relaxed. She stops trying so hard to impress everyone. She laughs more naturally. Sometimes she even becomes quieter, not because she is becoming less important, but because she no longer feels emotionally overwhelmed. Reality, because of fear, and fear can transform a man's behavior much faster than age ever could. That is the heartbreaking part. A woman can genuinely choose you with sincerity, emotionally, deeply, and completely, yet still end up losing you because you cannot believe you were truly worthy of being chosen from the beginning. But there is one final reason why younger women sometimes choose older men, and the truth is, it has very little to do with age itself. At a certain point in life, people stop searching for what only appears exciting and begin searching for what actually feels authentic. That transition happens earlier for some women than many men realize, especially women who have already gone through enough emotional disappointments to understand that attraction by itself cannot build a lasting relationship. Because eventually, the rush fades, the excitement settles down, and what remains is the emotional experience of being with that person. Can you feel peaceful around them? Can you trust how they respond? Do they make your life feel more stressful or more stable? These are the things that begin to matter, and many older men fail to recognize the power of what they quietly bring when they have developed a true inner world. Not money, not appearance, not reputation, an inner life. There is a major difference. Some men grow older physically, but stay emotionally immature forever. Others become wiser and more emotionally developed. You can hear the difference in how they communicate, in the moments they pause before answering, and in the things they no longer feel the need to prove to anyone. A younger woman often notices those details far more than men assume because emotional depth creates a certain psychological pull, and that emotional pull becomes extremely attractive in a world where many people feel disconnected and superficial. Do you know what many younger women are quietly becoming tired of? Constant performance. Everyone trying to market themselves, present a perfect image, appear impossible to reach, appear extremely valuable, emotionally detached, and flawless. After being surrounded by that kind of emotional environment for so long, authenticity becomes powerful, even when it comes with imperfections, especially when it comes with imperfections. That is why a younger woman may feel unexpectedly moved by an older man who simply lives honestly. No manipulation, no disappearing when emotions become difficult, no pretending that he does not care, just calm, genuine honesty. And surprisingly, that can feel more meaningful to her than dramatic romance ever did, because intensity can be created easily, but consistency cannot be faked. A man who repeatedly shows emotional reliability creates trust at a much deeper level, and trust changes attraction. It transforms simple interest into emotional attachment. That is the point where many men become uncertain because she is no longer seeing you as just another person in her life. Now she wants to know your thoughts. Your attention influences how she feels. Your absence becomes more noticeable than she expected. And this is something important to understand. Women do not form deep emotional bonds only because of appearance, youth, or excitement. They connect with emotional experiences that change the way they experience themselves. That is why some younger women become strongly attached to older men who make them feel calmer, emotionally protected, understood, and accepted. You become connected in her mind with a sense of relief from emotional pressure, and that is powerful. But there is another side of this that people rarely discuss openly. Sometimes younger women feel more emotionally secure with older men because older men are less interested in competing with them. That idea is important. Many younger relationships become quiet battles. Who cares less? Who responds last? Who has more choices? Who has more control over the emotional balance? Over time, that becomes exhausting. But emotionally mature older men often stop seeing relationships as competitions. And when a woman no longer feels like she has to fight emotionally for stability, closeness begins to develop naturally. Of course, not every relationship with an age difference is healthy. Some are created from fantasy, avoidance, emotional emptiness, or unresolved personal issues. Age by itself does not guarantee anything. What truly matters is emotional maturity. A younger woman may appreciate your stability and confidence, but if beneath that surface you are controlling, emotionally distant, manipulative, or constantly searching for approval, she will eventually recognize that as well. Women often sense emotional reality over time. They notice what exists beneath the words, and this is the part many men struggle to accept. A younger woman who genuinely chooses an older man usually is not searching for someone flawless. She is looking for emotional alignment. She wants a man whose words, actions, energy, and emotional presence match each other. That kind of consistency feels deeply reassuring, especially in a world where so many people feel emotionally divided and disconnected. Maybe that is why these relationships can impact people so strongly when they are genuine, because they require both individuals to face uncomfortable truths about themselves, her fears, your doubts, her openness, your insecurities, her aging, her doubts, your fear of losing her. It becomes less about the difference in years and more about emotional exposure. Two people allowing themselves to truly see each other without hiding. And honestly, that level of emotional openness scares many people, which brings us to the most difficult truth of all. The hardest truth is this: a younger woman can genuinely love an older man, and he may still struggle to fully believe it. Not because she is pretending or being dishonest, but because somewhere deep inside, he continues to see himself through the lens of his old pain, instead of seeing himself through the way she actually experiences him. And that quietly damages more relationships than age differences ever could. You can recognize it when a man begins pulling away emotionally. When the relationship starts becoming serious, he becomes doubtful of happiness, doubtful of peace, doubtful of being truly chosen, almost as if love must have some hidden threat attached to it in order to feel real. So instead of simply accepting her affection, he begins unconsciously examining it. He studies her actions too closely, looks for signs that she might leave, and turns small emotional changes into evidence that abandonment is coming. And the painful irony is that the fear he created to protect himself slowly builds the exact distance he was afraid of from the beginning. Because women can sense when a man is no longer emotionally present with them. Even a woman who deeply loves someone can eventually become exhausted from constantly proving that her feelings are genuine, especially when she already chose him willingly. Can you imagine the emotional weight of that? Having to repeatedly communicate in different ways. I am here, I chose you, I care about you, while feeling him slowly becoming more distant because he cannot accept her love alongside the way he sees himself. That is why confidence in relationships is not about being arrogant or acting superior. It is about emotional openness. It is the ability to allow yourself to receive love without questioning every beautiful moment until it disappears. And many men were never taught how to do that. They were taught how to chase, achieve, compete, protect, and provide. But accepting love peacefully, trusting emotional closeness, and allowing intimacy without fear is much more difficult, especially for men who have spent most of their lives emotionally surviving instead of feeling secure. So when a younger woman genuinely chooses an older man for healthy and grounded reasons, the relationship often pushes him into a difficult confrontation. Not with her, with himself, because now he has to ask, can I believe that someone sees my value beyond my age, my success, my appearance, or what I can provide? And that question goes much deeper than dating. It reaches identity itself. This is why some age gap relationships become unexpectedly life-changing for both people involved. Not because they escaped reality, but because they were forced to face reality honestly. She begins to understand her emotional needs beyond simple attraction. He begins to question whether he truly believes he is still worthy of a deep connection. That is real intimacy, not the idealized version, the difficult version. The version where another person sees your imperfections, your age, your fears, your emotional wounds, and your past experiences, and still chooses to stay. Do you realize how challenging that can be for some men to accept? Especially men who quietly believe that love has an expiration date connected to getting older or losing a certain image of masculinity. But here is what you need to understand before this ends. A woman choosing you is not the greatest miracle. The real miracle happens when you stop resisting the possibility that you are actually deserving of being chosen. Because age does change the body. It changes energy, perspective, priorities, and the way you see life. But emotional presence, wisdom, calmness, self-awareness, and the ability to make another person feel emotionally secure are qualities that can become stronger over time, not weaker. And women who truly value emotional depth can often recognize that immediately. Not every woman, of course. Every person is different. Some relationships will not succeed. Some attractions are temporary. Some age differences create genuine challenges and incompatibilities. That is simply reality. But a connection becomes meaningful when two people stop interacting from fear and begin connecting through honesty. And perhaps that is the part people do not talk about enough. A younger woman who genuinely chooses an older man is rarely choosing a number. She is choosing the way she feels when she is with him, more peaceful, more secure, more emotionally open, more understood. And sometimes, after years of confusion, pressure, emotional performance, and instability, that feeling becomes something she cannot easily walk away from.